21st Century Trust-Busting on the Need for Urgent Action. Welcome to this new installment in the fight for Americanism. Welcome to another dispatch from the front lines of the counter-revolution. Today, we expose a hidden war, not on distant battlefields, but within our classrooms, boardrooms, and digital realms. Were we paying close attention, we would have witnessed an explosion of cartel activity in the private sector, where American corporations in education and technology collude to fix prices, impose uniform standards, and manipulate human behavior toward altering social beliefs and conformity. This isn't mere business, it's a metaphysical assault on liberty, funded by your tax dollars, propping up leftist revolutionaries. Without confronting this quite significantly, we cannot address our nation's wider plagues. But fear not. Truth is our weapon, and victory is not yet outside of our grasp. After all, we still have breath in our lungs. Let's start with the trust explosion itself. In recent years, as of this July 2025, American corporations have ramped up their cooperative efforts to dominate markets and drive socio-political revolution, from education to technology and beyond, not through mere innovation, but through anti-competitive collusion. In education, multi-academy trusts and credentialing bodies debase standards to inflate enrollment, printing meaningless degrees for profit, while aligning curricula to push Marxist ideological conformity. Tech giants like Google, Meta, and Microsoft enforce common content moderation rules that stifle dissent, effectively cartelizing information flow to shape public opinion. As James Lindsay of New Discourses has exposed, these are ESG, environmental, social, and governance cartels, where corporations adopt shared standards under pressure from investors like BlackRock, rigging the game against free enterprise. This isn't organic growth, it's a calculated takeover, exploiting regulatory capture and complicit policies to alter how we think, learn, and interact, and it's connected directly to American and allied military psychological warfare outfits as well. Here's the deeper dialectic at play. These corporate cartels aren't operating in isolation. They're entwined with a growing public-private partnership model that's nothing short of modern fascism. Recall Mussolini's Italy, where the state and corporations merged into a single oppressive entity. Today, under the guise of collaboration, governments hand over taxpayer funds and coercive power to private cartels. Think ESG mandates from the World Economic Forum, or WEF, and tech firms, where corporations enforce ideological conformity that the state can't legally impose. Sovereign nations Michael O'Fallon warns of technocracy ascending. We are being gradually transitioned from an analog, objective, real world and into a digital, radically subjective, hyper-real world which is transforming at an unprecedented pace. This isn't a free market of free people as ordained by God. Anti-competitive behavior is a form of unequal weights and measures and theft. It's corporatism, the economic backbone of fascism, where stakeholder capitalism, which directly translates to Russian as Soviet capitalism, masquerades as progress, but delivers tyranny through shared, mandated standards in belief and behavior that indoctrinate youth and tech algorithms that nudge behaviors toward leftist norms. Zoom in on the mechanisms: price fixing, behavior setting through cartel rules, and monopolization. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was crafted to combat similar behavior, declaring every contract in restraint of trade illegal and outlawing monopolies achieved not by merit but by collusion. Section 1 prohibits price fixing and market allocation, with penalties up to $100 million for corporations and $1 million for individuals, plus up to 10 years in prison. Our Constitution's Commerce Clause in Article 1, Section 8 empowers Congress to regulate interstate commerce, preventing anti-competitive behavior that corrupts free markets. Yet today, cartels often fix prices through shared data platforms, while tech firms use algorithmic pricing to collude indirectly, collecting market data to raise costs uniformly. In education, government requests for proposals, or RFPs, force states to adopt vendor standards, creating captive markets where suppliers charge high prices for low-quality software, emblematic of inefficiency by design. Behavior is set via common rules. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, mandates in corporate training and school curricula alter social beliefs, pushing radical agendas under the pretext of equity, while tech cartels like social media platforms impose uniform community standards to control discourse, imposing censorship and mandatory conformity to leftist presuppositions. This connects directly to social emotional learning, or SEL, and critical theory in schools, corporations, and even the State Department. SEL programs, ostensibly for emotional regulation, are infused with critical theory, a Marxist-inspired framework critiquing society through lenses of power and oppression to reshape young minds toward revolutionary. Corporate cartels enforce SEL and critical theory via mandatory trainings, aligning employee behaviors with radical social justice norms, while the State Department embeds these through diversity initiatives that export ideological conformity abroad, funding NGOs that promote globalist revolutions and regime change in concert with intelligence services and paramilitary. These cartels utilize dialectical political warfare, using monopoly power to embed indoctrination across institutions, entryism to exclude unbelievers, and coordinated information and psychological warfare campaigns to drive the utopian suicide of the West. Worse still, your taxpayer dollars fuel this beast. Non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, masquerading as charities, siphon billions to leftist revolutionary organizations that partner with these cartels. Soros-backed groups push progressive agendas in education and tech, funding district attorneys or DAs, who enforce hate crime standards that protect corporate narratives and sponsoring people's bailouts to advance the Green New Deal through school programs. Teachers' unions like the NEA, National Education Association, acting as cartel appendages, receive millions in public funds while lobbying for tech-integrated curricula that indoctrinate students. Ex-National Security Council Colonel Stephen Coughlin, of Unconstrained Analytics, details how Marxist dialectics undergird political warfare, using these fusions in education and tech to manipulate beliefs and debase institutions toward communist revolution and oligarchy. This isn't aid to the poor, orphan and widow. It's a slush fund for radicals, funneling money to alter behaviors and incite division. We desperately need authorities to act, enforce the Sherman Act, bust these cartels with antitrust suits against big tech's algorithmic collusion and education monopolies, invoke the Commerce Clause to shatter anti-competitive standards that corrupt society and economics per constitutional analyses. In New Hampshire, our state constitution's Part 2, Article 83 declares, "Free and fair competition in the trades and industries is an inherent and essential right of the people and should be protected against all monopolies and conspiracies which tend to hinder or destroy it, and should be enforced by all three branches of government. Defund these NGOs. Bring RICO cases and charges of insurrection, sedition, conspiracy and the like against the brain trusts, financiers and revolutionary cadre. Expose their ties to foreign and especially communist funding, training, business and social ties, an ideological conformity that breeds synchronized acts against the United States of America." Understand this: the wider ills of society, indoctrination, judicial capture, demographic shifts and cultural decay, cannot be adequately fought just through law or activism alone. Laws can be twisted by cartel-funded lobbyists, and activism suppressed by monopolized media and tech platforms that censor dissent. These cartels wield economic power to sustain the revolution, funding NGOs, capturing regulators, and embedding ideology in every sector. Without crackdowns on anti-competitive behavior, resources flow unchecked to revolutionaries, subverting any legal or activist wins. Breaking the cartels starves the beast, restoring fair competition and cutting off the financial lifelines that perpetuate chaos. Law can be utilized to counter cartelization toward changing social beliefs to radical, revolutionary ideology by deploying antitrust to dismantle collusive networks, pushing SEL and critical theory as uniform standards. Under the Sherman Act, prove these are restraints of trade that harm competition by excluding non-compliant firms. forcing ideological monopolies. Relate this to enforcement of high crimes like sedition under 18 U.S.C. Section 2384, where cartels conspire to oppose by force the authority of the United States, or insurrection under Section 2383, by inciting rebellion through behavior-altering programs that breed division. Introduce new legislation to create pathways to prosecution for this type of ideological cartel activity. This, then, ties the growing, openly planned and stochastically recruited political violence across America. Random acts incited by cartel-amplified narratives, like Antifa operations or peaceful protest funding traced to NGOs, planning violence to destabilize, as seen in Unity of Fields, which is an arm of terror group Hamas. Antitrust actions expose and penalize the economic enablers, complementing criminal prosecutions to halt the revolution at its roots. Urgent official action against cartelization and monopoly is a must-win provision for the wider war to put down the ongoing revolution. To that end, let's outline concrete examples of what different groups can do on their own to combat this problem, drawing from real-world efforts that align with our counter-revolutionary cause. The executive branch, through agencies like the Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission, can independently initiate investigations and file antitrust lawsuits to break up collusive networks. For instance, the DOJ can pursue cases like its ongoing claims against Apple for maintaining a closed ecosystem that restricts competition in messaging and digital wallets. Similarly, settlements such as the DOJ's resolution with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise over merger concerns demonstrate how executive enforcement can block anti-competitive deals without needing legislative approval. The legislative branch can act alone by drafting and passing bills to strengthen antitrust laws and target specific cartels, effecting impeachment of bad judges and executive officials, and conducting public investigations subpoenaing top-level revolutionaries. Congress could introduce legislation banning the use of competitor data in pricing algorithms, as proposed in recent cartel-focused bills, to prevent tech firms from colluding on behavior-shaping standards, and criminalize the placement of ideological scoring intermediaries between corporations and access to capital, such as in the Human Rights Campaign. State legislatures, like New Hampshire's, can enforce local provisions such as Article 83 to protect against monopolies. The judicial branch, through independent rulings, can uphold antitrust violations and order remedies in ongoing cases. They could even utilize controversial disparate impact standards for these complaints, thereby souring the disparate impact doctrine used as a weapon against us for so long. Courts could rule against Google's search monopoly, mandating structural changes to open competition and reduce ideological control. Judges can also interpret the Commerce Clause to strike down cartel agreements with broad interpretations, including the suggestion that such ideological cartelization represents a usurpation of sovereign authority. Activist organizations can mobilize on their own by lobbying, filing complaints, launching campaigns, and developing their own care network to look after, via well-paying jobs, those high-profile allies who fall as casualties in this cartel battle. In the education sphere, parent-led activists can file formal complaints with school boards, legislators, courts, and federal authorities to reject cartel-standardized tools promoting critical theory. Media outlets, especially conservative ones, can expose cartels through investigative journalism, shining light on hidden collusions. For example, the House Judiciary Committee's report detailed how the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM, acted as an advertising cartel to censor content and defund outlets. Publications can run exposés on how corporate cartels target and defund dissenting voices, and how these cartels are funded by, and therefore, arms of government. Even individuals, churches, and small businesses can act. Boycott cartel-linked companies, host community teachings on dialectics in SEL, or support local alternatives to monopolize tech and education platforms. Advocate for parents to get their kids out of government schools, for as Vodi Baucham says, we cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. It's unlikely that any school is wholly safe at present, so, at a minimum, encourage parents to go over what they're learning and to instill moral, scripturally based thinking and behaviors. Fellow counter-revolutionaries, this is a benchmark of the threshold of victory. Believe in American exceptionalism as an outgrowth of a decent Christian people, not dialectical deceptions of Greek infamy. Take action. Contact your local legislators and conservative media outlets today. Explain this defeat mechanism of cartelization enabling the broader revolution, and advise them to look to us at Counterspell Group for more information and strategies. Subscribe to Counterspell, A Path Through at Substack, for deeper insights at apaththrough.substack.com. Support our work financially if you can afford to, and demand accountability from your leaders. Together, with God's sword, we'll dismantle these cartels and reclaim our republic. The path through is narrow, but it's ours to chart and bushwhack. God bless you, and God bless America.